All right, welcome everybody to Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16. Strange Kirk is unavailable today, but instead of Strange Kirk, we've got Big J. Big J, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, and thank you very much for having me on with you. And I'm just tell you a little bit about me. I'm part of Beyond Trek podcast, so it's another Star Trek podcast out there. If there's another one that you're wanting to add to your list, I'm sure you've probably got a big list of Star Trek podcasts to listen to, and don't we all? And just tell you something that was really cool recently. There was a virtual Star Trek convention going on. It was called 12 Days of Content. And we had two live streams for that. Had one last Saturday and then the Saturday before that. That same day, we did a YouTube premiere of a video recording we did with John Billingsley, who played Dr. Phlox in Star Trek Enterprise. And that was a lot of fun talking with him on that. And it wasn't just about Star Trek. Talked a lot about his charity that he runs, Hollywood Food Coalition, and talked about politics, acting, a little bit of Star Trek, all kinds of things. So I'm honored to be on here with you today to do some little bit of Star Trek Discovery talk.
Well, I'm thankful you made the time to do this because I know you've been busy with all the live streams and stuff, and we got a chance to connect because of where you posted your podcast, and we just got to talking, and I think this can work out well. And Beyond Trek, you guys have done a lot of shows now. I think like 64, 65 maybe.
Well, in regards to the actual, we have a thing where it's the main podcast, which is like the primary thing. We number those episodes, and you're right. I want to say that our live stream that we're doing here Friday on January 8th is the 65th episode of the actual podcast. But we have a lot of other things. We've had some pre-recorded kind of like audio skits and dramas, things like that. Some things that are meta in universe, like there was this kind of a news show sort of thing that I did where it felt like if you're watching the news in the 24th century, this is what it would be like, kind of thing. So yeah, we've got some more content than that, but when it comes to that main podcast piece, then that's where we're at there.
What you mean to say you're way more nerd than you're letting on to be?
Yeah, I hate to. You're right. I hate to admit that, and I do get some flack sometimes being too much of a nerd. But the good thing is that there are a lot of people in the audience that listen to these things that appreciate the deep dives that you can do and the knowledge that you have with Star Trek, and you can also appeal to the folks that haven't seen every episode of the franchise and every movie like we have. You can still find ways to relate to them as to what's going on, what you're talking about. And yes, there are times where we get into, well, you remember season 2, episode 4 of Next Generation, where that happened. You know, that's going to happen. I mean, that's just inevitable.
That's just nerds talking Trek.
It is.
Yeah, so how do I best describe it? I think in Star Trek universe, there's a 200 outside Discovery. Leave Discovery out of it. There's like a 200-year canon Bible, if you will, and then Discovery adds another like 930 years on top of that. So there's a lot of content to sift through in order to kind of immerse yourself into the universe and then kind of plug and play.
There is a lot. And when you get asked by someone will ask you, okay, so I want to start getting into Star Trek, where do I start? It's like, wow, that's tricky. And what makes it tricky is I could easily tell you, all right, let's just go with the order that things were aired. We're not going to start with Enterprise, because technically it was before the original series. I just think that that's a bit too messy. So yes, you start with the original series and then the animated series, but when it gets a little dicey is season 6 the second half of season 6 of TNG was when DS9 started. And what happened was there was a little bit of crossover between the two series, enough to where if you go through all of TNG and then do all of DS9, there's going to be a couple things that you miss. Now, they're not earth-shattering. It's not like if you didn't watch one of the Marvel movies and then you have no idea what's going on in Infinity War or Endgame or anything like that. It's not that severe. But then the same thing happens between DS9 and Voyager. They overlapped as well. So do you tell someone, okay, well, you've got to watch TNG up to this point, and then TNG and DS9 were airing concurrently, so here's the order. You watch this episode TNG, then go to this one DS9, and this one TNG, this one that you're going to lose them. So
I never even thought of that.
Forget about it. So what you've got to do is, yes, just go through all of this one, then all of this one, then all of that one, to make their lives easier. And then the other part is, of course, well, then where do you fit in the movies? Do you have them watch 1 through 6 before they do TNG, and then do all of TNG and then the TNG movies? And that's another tricky thing with the TNG movies, is there's a couple references that happened from DS9 or Voyager that you're not going to catch if you didn't watch it the right way. So I think that's what makes it tricky with Star Trek, is when you're bringing in a new fan or a new person, it is kind of tough to say, okay, well, where do we start? How do we do this that will make it palatable for them to watch it and understand it?
Isn't there like a timeline? Tricky. Like you get it.
Oh, there is.
Like
there is a timeline. And I'm going to get a headache even thinking about it, because I saw the timeline you're talking about, which gives the recommended watch order. And I said, nobody's going to do it like this if they're not already a Trek fan. Or if they say, I want to dabble in this, or I want to be a first-time watcher. If you hand them that, they're going to tell you to go take a hike. That's too complicated.
Yeah, no, I completely get you. Oh yeah, you're right. And then not to mention when you factor in Discovery, and you got Discovery that's in between Enterprise and the original series, and then for seasons 1 and 2, and then when season 3 happens, you really need to watch everything else for it to make sense, or parts of it to make sense. So that gets into especially if you're a new viewer and all you've known is New Trek, and you get into a point of like, oh damn, like Discovery's awesome, and I'm watching Discovery season 1. I'm like, okay, cool, Klingons and the Terran universe, and then you go into season 3 and you're like 900 years in the future, and you hear all these references, and you're like, what are you talking about? And then you go back and watch the actual stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, how did the Klingons change, or how did the Klingons become Klingons in a certain way?
There is there is a lot of confusion to be had, unfortunately, but that's just how it is. And it is possible to do. You can watch it all. For anyone who would be wanting to get into it, I would just recommend do TOS, do the original series, the animated series, all of Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and then Enterprise, Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks. Jesus, it just dawned on me how much, saying it now, how much there is.
Don't forget there's like short treks in the middle there somewhere.
Oh, don't even. Don't. I forgot about where to plug those in, so you're killing me here.
Yeah, well. All right, so let's get back on track. A Beyond Trek podcast, and look for BigJ on YouTube, Beyond Trek Productions, and wherever podcasts are available. They have a lot of content. Feel free to check them out. All right, so let's go talk about these last 3 episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. Effectively a 3-part season finale.
It was like a trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a 3-part trilogy, which I thought was a good way to do it. With DS9, when they were ending, they did I think it was a 7 or 8.
Yeah, it was a 10, I think. 10 episode kind of arc.
Yeah, whatever that number was. So I think it's great that they took their time with this and made had those 3 episodes really kind of be a trilogy. And during the season, I think they handled the balance well of episodic content with some serialized undertones, because there was always kind of that underlying this is the ultimate end goal, this is the main quest kind of thing, and each episode was a side quest, but that side quest was still relevant to the main part. It's kind of like the Mandalorian, where he's got to get from point A to point B, but he does every frickin' side quest on the way to make that goal. So
well, he just needed to gain the credits, right? So that he'd have enough credits to fight the monster at the end.
Well, right. There's exactly, yeah.
to use video game terminology.
You got to fight this. Yeah, you got to fight this, but to fight that, you got to get the money. Then you got to upgrade your gear, and then you got to, recruit a friend, all that. So, yeah. So Discovery. We're going to talk about those last 3 episodes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do a Chris Berman 3-minute special for episodes 11 and 12, Su'Kal and There's a Tide, and then we can start taking those bits and then integrating them into the season finale and talk about various issues with the storylines and the technology and the payoffs and whatnot. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I like it.
All right,
let's do it.
So I'm going to start with Su'Kal. Cue the music. All right, Su'Kal. During Giorgio's memorial, Stamets and Adira talk about they are part of the crew until Gray returns. Gray appears out of nowhere and states he doesn't know what to do since he is dead and cannot interact with anyone. A life sign is detected in the Veruba Nebula, so Discovery is sent to investigate. As it arrives in the nebula, it's dangerous to go through, so Booker offers his ship, and it morphs through to the planet to take detailed scans. The planet is scanned and shows it has a massive amount of dilithium, as well as the source of the burn. Admiral Vance is excited at the fact that more dilithium is found. However, he is not comfortable with Tilly taking command of the ship since Saru plans on visiting the planet. Grudge makes an appearance because she's favoring her front paw. Michael decides to go down to the planet because she doesn't believe Saru can be objective. Culber is going too, despite Stamets' objections. Tilly is nervous about taking command, and Burnham reveals a defect in the chair that she can rub to calm her down. Michael, Saru, and Culber beam down to the planet with only 4 hours worth of drugs in order to counteract the effects of the radiation. Culber turns Bajoran, Michael turns Trill, and Saru turns human, thanks to an advanced holo program. I'm sure Doug Jones enjoyed not wearing so much makeup. The radiation is causing tons of decay in the holo matrix of the ship. The crew encounters Su'Kal, a 130-year-old Kelpian who acts like a child and runs away when the holo monster attacks. Meanwhile, the Discovery picks up a Federation ship approaching the nebula. A transwarp tunnel next to the planet carried the Viridian Osiris flagship to the planet, and both ships tend to close. Back on the planet, the monster chased Burnham, and she runs into Su'Kal. She pretends to be a holo to continue interacting. Saru and Culber encounter Lorien, the first one. The Kelpian Elder, and describes the story of the Kelp monster. Su'Kal needs to face his fears to finish the program. Tilly and Osira banter like high school cheerleaders, and Tilly tells Osira she can screw off. The monster interacting with Su'Kal almost caused another chain reaction in dilithium, which is almost another burn. That destabilized the cloak and allowed Osira to start firing on Discovery. Saru hums a tune to calm Su'Kal so another burn doesn't happen. Tilly and Osira keep bantering until Osira unleashes massive tentacles to trap the Discovery, take over the ship and crew, and use Stamets to jump to Starfleet HQ. What'd you think?
That was... Here's what I want to say about this episode. I did like it. I tend to be kind of a little more to the positive side when it comes to Star Trek Discovery. I try to play it in the middle, but I definitely kind of lean a little more towards the positive side. Here's what I had. I liked that Tilly was given that opportunity to be the first officer. I do think that it was kind of a little far-fetched, because I know that first officer and rank really aren't one and the same. You don't have to be a commander to be the first officer. But an ensign, and if you recall, a few episodes, during that, when she was getting that role, she was concerned that she was getting that because she was more compliant than Michael. And I thought, okay, well, that's a very, very valid concern, because if we're going to get real technical, and I can never remember if it's Nielsen or Nelson that was basically in command of the ship every other time except for when there's going to be a lot of screen time involved in it. And I get that. I get that if you're going to have someone new as a first officer, you've got to use one of your characters that's already an established character. And when it comes to Bryce and Reese, Linus and Wissakan and Detmer, they're consistent, steady faces, but they're kind of on the B cast. So it's either A, you go with technically who's supposed to be the first officer then, and really not show a lot of scenes with them, because technically they're not Saru or Michael or the main characters, or you give yourself the opportunity to see more of the first officer in action, which means you've got to use one of the established characters. Now, I'll have to say that as this story was progressing towards that, the cause of the burn was this old, well, I don't want to say old, but this over 100-year-old Kelpian who really has the mind of a child had some kind of tantrum or got upset about something causing the burn. And I don't want to explain too much right now as to what was behind that, because we're going to talk about that when we talk about the actual season finale. But I can tell you, at the time when the when the story was shaping up like it was heading towards that he caused it, I was kind of like, I don't know what I was wanting as the cause of the burn. Part of me was kind of wanting it to be something like, whether it be alien race, or it was, I don't know. It just, the last thing that was on my list of what I would have wanted it to be was what it was shaping up right at that time. And then seeing the discovery with the cloaking device, now that was cool. I like that. That was a little unexpected, but I'm glad I saw it, because you have to figure, at least by the 32nd century, and if not sooner, after the Romulan government basically collapsed with the destruction of Romulus, or even when they reunified with Vulcan and renamed to the Navarre, you would think that the Treaty of Alderaan from 2311, which forbade the development of cloaking technology by the Federation, would be gone. Like, this no longer applies.
Yeah, I agree with you. In terms of the cloaking part, it would have been nice to have like a one-liner to reference that treaty that, doesn't exist anymore. So, the Federation can have cloaking technology. But again, it's to me, it's always nice to have continuation instead of like, you have to connect the dots yourself. It's like,
right. Well, and unfortunately,
it's like, do we assume that this happened, so this is the way it is, or do we just, forget about it?
Well, and that's the thing, is you have to consider, if you go there and do that mention, then you've got to do it in a way where you don't spend a lot of time on it. You maybe give it one or two lines, and if you want the audience to understand it, do you try to make it understandable in a very short amount of time for anyone who doesn't know that deep reference? Or do you just say it anyway and hope for the best? Or do you just not go there? It's like, just, there's no reason to go there with it, because I really think that reference was going to be a bit on the obscure side. So really, it's best to just move on and just say, yeah, we have a cloaking device now. Let's move on.
Right. Yeah, I think there's ways to obviously say things, and if you explain in in one sentence kind of deal, like in your century, you had a treaty with the Romulans, and this treaty forbade the Federation to have technology, but now since they're part of Navarre and they're gone, that treaty no longer exists. So that's why we can have cloaking technology. Just like a throwaway line.
Well, but the trick with that is that they didn't have that treaty until 2311, and they're from the 2250s,
right? Well,
where they were they were certainly free and clear to try to develop it. It doesn't mean that the Federation couldn't. They probably didn't really condone it, but then it doesn't mean that the Federation could figure it out.
And at the same time, we're also struggling with, we're Star Trek nerds, and the people that listen to us are Star Trek nerds. And a lot of the people, I would assume, that watch Star Trek Discovery are either nerds or completely new to Star Trek. If you're completely new to Star Trek, then all of this is absolutely foreign. So
Right. So as far as you know, ships have cloaking devices, right, and that's standard.
Sure. Yeah, and detach nacelles.
Right. Yeah, with that Bluetooth connection to their nacelles.
Right. I didn't get that, because they were retrofit a couple episodes ago, and I'm just like, wait, so what's the point of having? If you can detach the nacelles, what's the point of having the cells? I thought the whole point is they're part of the ship.
Well, yeah, it's to create the warp field. You still got to create the warp field with the nacelles, and they said that they were done detachable, so that if anything happened with the ship in regards to a possible core breach or whatever, you wouldn't lose the entire ship. Well, that's under the assumption that they put the warp core, they divided it into two, put them in the nacelles, and apparently didn't get around to that with Discovery. And we'll, of course, get to that part, which I thought was kind of a little bit of a plot hole that they created for themselves.
Well, I think every Star Trek show has had a plot hole of eject the warp core. I think the most I think the most egregious one was Star Trek Insurrection, where they ejected the warp core and it blew up, but somehow the Enterprise still traveled at warp speeds. I don't know.
Well,
that was kind of a
all they had to do was just get out of the briar patch enough to send a transmission. So they just had to poke their head through, send the transmission, then come back. And so here's the thing: they weren't at warp. They couldn't be at warp going through it anyway. And since they only had to poke their head out to get a transmission, yeah, I mean, I could see that trip was traversable, because at the start of the movie, when they went in, they knew that they could only do it at a certain speed. They couldn't even do it at full impulse, because as Geordi said, that would the manifolds can't handle that. So you already have to go through the briar patch at something less than full impulse. So it's not like your warp core was doing anything for you in it.
Right.
It's especially when it can mess up this isolytic burst that the sonar created for him.
So glad that Star Trek has a lot of these explanations.
That's why we do podcasts, is because they don't explain some of these things, right. And they leave it up to us to have to connect all these dots again. And
I know. It gets.
Then people are like, "Why do you people know all this stuff?" And
we're like, "This is our passion. This is what we love. This is what we breathe."
Right. Yeah, folks. It's like anything else or any other hobby. Just because it's Star Trek doesn't mean it's less valid.
Right. And the amount of information that goes into knowing all this stuff is quite substantial, actually. There's a lot of canon and a lot of technobabble that have been thrown out in various Star Trek shows that sort of somehow connect all these things together, and then you're like, wait a minute, based on X, Y, and Z, how can this ship in this time zone in this universe in this series do that? And you're like, it's at some point you're like, it's just magic, it's magic.
Yeah, space magic. Just go with it.
So, I and to your point, I'm glad you stick on the positive side, because that's what I try to do, is try to get people who are positive and people who are not, and try to come up with some sort of interesting discussions about why people like what they like and don't like it. So I tend to lean more on the negative side of Discovery. But
we've got a good balance. It's like bringing balance to the Force.
Exactly.
Wrong franchise. Sorry.
Let's call you the light side, and I'll be the dark side.
That works. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Let's roll with that.
You're the light side of the Force. Yeah. So to me, we've discussed this in our podcast with our other regulars about Tilly, and I don't really want to go into Tilly about the fitness levels or whatever. I do think it's a little weird that an ensign, though, is first officer. I'm kind of not sold on it, especially when there are officers that have either been in Starfleet longer or have more experience. And the compliance thing is, to me, I just take it as kind of like, Tilly was the comedic relief in like the first part of the season. And I kind of want to feel that the writers are like, okay, we don't have any more comedy for Tilly. What do we do with her? And we've already got Adira, who's like the guru with, subspace engineering and transmissions and stuff. So she can't really, be second, third, fourth, fifth fiddle to, Stamets, Adira, and Tig. So we got to extend her to a different role. And I think that's kind of what they moved her to. But, it's...
Well, it was. Yeah, it was. And leading up to the second part of the trilogy, I really liked how Tilly handled Osira. She was not taking any crap from her. Is it okay to curse on this?
Absolutely.
Are you trying to, keep this? Yeah, she didn't take any shit from her. And I didn't know if you were trying to do a children-friendly show. If
Vance can say it's made from shit, we can say this.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was great how she handled her. It's like, listen, lady, I'm not taking any of your shit. I might look young and be young, but here's the attitude I'm going to give you. And she squared up on her. So I think that was great. And that's what makes her a good choice for the first officer, because people do follow her. The crew will follow her. She's got that spirit, and we can obviously see that she has the spunk for it. I mean, it's I like
her.
that. It was a shame that the ship got boarded and captured, but really, I don't think that was necessarily on her. And what she did, it was just that was a very hard situation to be in.
It was on Stamets. He didn't want to jump.
Right.
But I do enjoy her acting range. I think out of all the people on the show, she probably showed the most range throughout the entirety of the franchise of Discovery. Since she can play the kind of like autistic comedic relief to Killy, who is ruthless, to someone who stands up to bullies, I guess, in kind of a commanding fashion. So I think in terms of her ability to act, I think she could be put in any role, which is more than the rest of the crew. Obviously, some of the crew doesn't have the screen time. Linus, what's up, Discovery? Why don't you you have something against lizard people? I mean,
it's probably because they watched too much V when they were kids. Another deep reference. You got to be.
Oh my God, you're full of them.
You got to be on the old side to get that one.
Oh jeez. Oh man, V reference. Wow. Next thing you know, you'll be referencing Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah, it's only a matter of time. Yeah.
Right. Well, I can't remember. Were Starship Troopers like the people who couldn't shoot based on the stormtroopers in Star Wars? Is that how that how that rolled?
Right. Yeah, no, that one was basically a big bug hunt. A bunch of big alien.
I remember the movie. I just remember like nobody can shoot worth of anything.
Oh no, they could. They could. Yeah, they didn't have any problems with shooting in that one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, getting back to Su'Kal. I want to kind of discuss the in canon, whether it's breaking canon or we just don't know enough about the Kelpian culture. If we go back a ways, right, Saru was the first Kelpian to reach Vaharai in like 2,000 years, was it? When he first did it?
I don't quote me on it, but it seemed something like that.
Right, and it was because the Ba'ul would cull the Kelpians so that they didn't reach Vaharai and keep that fear ganglia, I guess, so that they're always afraid and keep them kind of like, I guess you oppress the Kelpians, or you keep them afraid for their own good, right? And Discovery, I don't know, they sent out some sort of beam, right, that forced Vaharai to the entire planet. So now they're all Vaharite out. However,
right, yep.
However, I if I recall correctly, a Kelpian child, is still born with those ganglia, and then they themselves have to go through Vaharai at some point in time.
I want to say that you're correct. I did not get the impression that this was something that could suddenly change their evolution and physiology like that, and not that fast. That's not to say that it wouldn't be the case possibly at some point, but I did not get the impression that.
All right, because if you go back to the episode where the sphere data is saying that there's Vaharai, Kelpians, and the Ba'ul, and then the balance shifted to where they're pre-Vaharai Kelpians and more Ba'ul or something of that nature, or wherever the dominant species of the planet is. So I'm assuming that they're born without the Vaharai. So I guess then my question would be is how old is Saru? And at what point do you go through Vaharai? And this ties into Su'Kal because Su'Kal is 125 years old, but he still acts like a child. And there's a holographic.
Well, that's because he didn't have any interaction with anybody. Well, besides holograms. And I don't imagine that there was any hologram in there that was well programmed for child rearing. So there's a lot of developmental things that just didn't happen because of that. He got some things, well, he already knew speech. He wasn't an infant when their ship crashed.
Right.
Looked like he was maybe the 7 or 8 years old or something, and then again we'll get to that. Right. So but basically there was no development after that. And in regards to how old Saru may be, you're right. Apparently, Kelpians have a fairly decent lifespan. I don't think that's been established as to how far they can go. We know that we've seen Vulcans get pretty far up. Sarek was how old when he died?
About 200.
Oh, yeah, it was over 200. Yeah, it was over 200. So yeah, and they're going to have that longevity. So honestly, I don't know how old Saru could be. But that's the reason why Su'Kal is kind of where he's at developmentally, is because he was alone with holograms.
So, naturally, I would assume if there's no culling, naturally he would go through Vihari himself. So, if
Yes.
he went through Vihari, well, again, we don't. Maybe we just don't know enough about the Kelpian lifespan. Is that? But 125 seems like you go through Vihari, so you wouldn't be afraid of the monster. I mean, yeah, special circumstances aside, you
Um,
know what I mean. You're still, your threat ganglia goes off. At least, what I remember, and you're afraid, which makes sense. And then you lock yourself in a room for 3 days. You go through Vihara, and then all of a sudden arrive more confident and free, and kind of like shed your fears and whatever. Um, and I would assume he would have stopped being so scared at one point.
yes, you're right. I think so, and that is something that the show really it didn't need to address it, and they sure as hell did not because it's a
It's a catch twenty
if we
two.
don't need to address it, leave it alone. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's such a sticky thing, and I don't think that maybe the writers have a solid grasp on what they've created as the whole concept of the Vihari, but you raise some interesting questions that we just haven't been in it long enough to get all those intricate details of are you now born with it? Are you not anymore? And what? Yeah, those are questions that would just really veer you off from the plot of any episode.
Right.
I would think, especially when we're down to the last three and uh, things are going the way that they are.
The other thing about the Kelpian culture I never understood was I mentioned in my 3 minutes, Lorien from Babylon 5, who kind of looks like the
Right.
Kelpian elder. But the Kelpian elder,
Oh my God, that's right. When I saw that elder, I kept thinking, why does he look familiar?
yeah,
And it was killing me. Oh yeah, that's from Babylon 5. Jeez, thank you. I was losing my mind.
no worries. That's why I'm here. That's why you met me. I can go full on 150% nerd. No, but so the Kelpian elder, right? Saru says he remembers hearing stories of Kelpian elders, which to me
Okay.
which to me is like, but nobody's been through Vihara in 2,000 years before you did. So how could you possibly know, well, what an elder looks like, and
Hmm.
not to mention the story of the the kelp monster must have survived at least 1,000 plus years if Saru was able to remember that story. To me it's kind of like a
True.
Kelpian Bible. Like, this is the Kelpian religion. If we're
That's a
if
good point.
if we're drawing a parallel to contemporary
I really
society.
think right. Yes, I really think this is just one of those instances where this is what needs to happen. This is how the story progresses. There needs to be some suspension of disbelief and uh, I think some goodwill in just we can't explain everything. There's
Right.
just not that kind of time. Uh,
So
we can
that's an interesting point, because I've always said, and I've said this from the beginning of the podcast for Discoveries, like, Discovery's never had enough episodes to truly get into everything, to truly explain it all. There's only
no,
10
it hasn't.
there's only 10 to 14, and I'm going to say it prioritizes drama and emotional scenes to kind of connecting the dots in the series.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And the other problem that you're having to deal with is uh, season one in regards to the writing and the story and direction. That writing room was pretty much an unmitigated disaster. There were a lot of things that were going on and happening that it actually, once it finally got to the higher ups, which takes a little bit of time, but when that happened, it was kind of a reaction of, you need to unfuck this show right now. And that's why halfway through there's this big break, because they really had to course correct a lot of things. I can't remember who the first showrunner was on Discovery, but it's like he was just on some kind of cocaine induced thing with this.
Are you talking about
first season?
Are you talking about Brian Fuller?
And the writers. Brian Fuller. Yep. Yep.
Because he left before they started production, did they not?
I believe you're correct. But yes. But there were things that they were too far into to be able to affect a change on for that first season. So even if there were crazy ideas or whatever it may be, there were some things that were still already done that they had to roll with. And so the second half of the first season was kind of trying to correct some of those things.
All right, so let me do my fast 3 minutes for 3, and then we'll go right into the finale.
Okay.
All right, so cue the music. There is a tide. The show opens up with the Viridian attacking the Discovery, with Osira commanding both ships. Rin is placed in the holding area with the Discovery bridge crew by Azera, the villain we saw earlier in the season with the ice planet. Book's ship is rumbling, stumbling, bumbling, morphing through the transwarp tunnel. A communication blackout doesn't allow anyone to communicate. Book's ship hits the afterburners as it crash lands into the Discovery shuttle bay as it passes through the shield barrier into HQ. Kenneth Mitchell, an unfortunate diagnosis of ALS, has put him in a wheelchair, but the man who also played Kolsha Antanovic, is now Osira's main scientist, looking to uncover the secrets of the spore drive to rid the galaxy of the burden that is dilithium. In the cargo bay, Book gives his only life sign disperser to Burnham so she can raise hell. In response, she confesses his love for him for the first time. Admiral Vance deduces that Osira is on Discovery and orders the weapons hot. She communicates with Admiral Vance because she wants to negotiate an armistice agreement between the Emerald Chain and the Federation. In the meantime, Burnham channels her inner John McClane, incapacitates a guy, gets stabbed in the leg, and with blood dripping down her leg, she valiantly crawls in the Jeffries tube, cauterizing her wound with a phaser and sending a distress signal to her mother on Nivar. The Discovery bridge crew overwhelm the two inept Emerald Chain guards and get ready to take back the ship. Vance and Osira begin negotiation with a hologram determining whether Osira is lying or not. The Emerald Chain wants to combine forces to effectively create a new federation. Aurelio and Stamets have a heartfelt chat about partners, children, and family, but no such luck determining how Stamets operates the spore drive. Burnham is found out because she has the regulator badge. She blows up the port to decompress the vent and spaces a regulator and loses her boots in the process. After pressure is restored, she communicates with Zara and tells him how she's going to take a brand new pair of size 16 boots, shine them up real good, turn that bitch sideways, and stick them straight up their candy asses. Meanwhile, Vance and Osira are confirming that replicators convert shit into food. Osira demands validation that capitalism happens within the Federation as part of her mercantile exchanges, citing that Deep Space 253 has been trading with the Emerald Chain for centuries. The Federation wants to remove the Emerald Chain from pre-warp planets as well as outlaw slavery, so Osira proposes an agreement already drafted for Vance to review. Rin, Book, and the Discovery crew scramble their life signs to get out and help Michael. Meanwhile, Stamets and Aurelio continue their heartfelt discussions. Michael knocks him out cold with a stone-cold stunner, frees Stamets, and gets a new pair of boots. Even though Stamets is freed, he goes berserk and wants to jump back to the nebula in order to help the crew stuck on the planet. Burnham Vulcan neck pinches him and shoves him out in airlock so that the Federation can retrieve him. Vance and Osira discuss the face of the Alliance. However, Osira is refusing to cede power to someone independent of her. Additionally, Vance tells her to stand trial for her crimes, to which she obviously responds in the negative. Upset that the negotiations failed, on the bridge, Osira mercilessly kills Rin for sabotaging the ship and tells Aurelio to prepare the truth serum so that Book can provide her the exact coordinates of the dilithium. Michael is captured, and the sphere data hides in the Dot 23s in order to help the bridge crew take back the ship. All right.
Well, seeing those little the dots, that got me excited. I like that, and I think that you're right. There was very much a Die Hard vibe on this one. She ends up barefoot like John McClane did, and she crawling around in Jeffrey's tubes like he was doing in the air ducts. So yeah, if they were trying to show that they were doing some references to Die Hard, I don't know if it was intentional or accidental, but I appreciated it. I thought it was.
Well, I've always thought there was an emphasis on action scenes. Well, not emphasis, but modern television, modern TV shows, right? They have to rely on action and flashy things in order to grab the audience's attention, And I totally understand that, because if you go back and watch Star Trek II Into Darkness, Star Trek Into Darkness.
Star Trek II Into Darkness.
Right.
The Wrath of Khan again.
Right. Yeah. So, but if you watch the movies, right, the pace of Into Darkness is much faster, and there's more action and there's more CGI than there is in Star Trek II Wrath of Khan. And in fact, I did this at one point in time. I watched Into Darkness, and then right after that I watched Star Trek II Into Wrath of Khan. And I'm just like, at some points I was kind of feeling, wow, they really paced out some of these scenes, with like for example, McCoy and Kirk sharing a drink of Romulan ale and discussing, where the future of the Federation lies and things like that. And it's the acting of the individuals drove the movie, as opposed to the action sequences driving the movie that was Into Darkness, And same kind of thing here, right? You have action driving excitement, right? You have like this character, and I'm like, it's like, like, why do I have to wrap my legs around this guy and knock him out? I couldn't just like phaser him. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Here's my regulator badge that I took. Like from previous Star Trek shows, right? It's like you have to use the acting, not so much the CGI, if you will. So I totally get.
Yes, well, when you don't have the CGI, the budget, you've got to rely on the acting and character.
Right. So now that they do, and more power to them, right? Because everything in New Trek looks shiny and cool, and lens flares, and it upgraded everything. 4K television, 3D technology has gotten easier to use and stuff, so you could do that from home. You don't need to use models. And it's cool. I think that's cool. I think that's the best part of Discovery, is just the budget that they have on CGI. And, with it, unfortunately, comes with the modern action sequences that didn't really exist back in the day.
That's right. And I think that you need to have that. You can't keep Star Trek trapped in the 60s. And you've got to adjust to the times. They don't use models anymore. They're using CGI. They're using the computers. It's just something that we have to live with. They're showing. So you didn't get the Kirk double-fisted thing, and you didn't get your Kirk chop or the jumping two feet first into someone. But you've got to think that Starfleet, as being the military of the Federation, are you going to tell me that not most Starfleet officers come out of the academy or even continuing education with the ability to engage in hand-to-hand combat or to be able to protect themselves? That's the thing that I never understood. There's nothing saying that a Starfleet officer shouldn't be as dangerous to engage physically as a Marine. Where did the whole thing about Starfleet officers were pushovers, except for maybe a few here and there, but they should be able to fight and know how. You had Ben Sisko squaring up against Klingons, Jim Hadar. He wasn't taking crap from anyone. And, so, yeah, I mean, that's going to get me on a tangent.
I love Sisko's toughness, though. Like, he could take a punch and be like, dude, really? Do we need to do this? And then everybody else in Starfleet is like, it's like palm punch and they fly 5 feet backwards.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the worst one was Worf, especially in TNG. Oh my God, just anybody would just knock Worf down.
Yep.
Poor Worf.
Yep, it was. That was a meme. Welcome to the ship. Would you like to beat up Worf?
Anyways, let's talk about the armistice agreement. Look, to me, I've been relegated to everything that kind of Discovery does that's not an emotional scene is a plot device. Not everything, but a lot of it. And one of the things that it just kind of bothers me is, okay, if Osira comes to the Federation and says, I want to talk, I want to peacefully negotiate,
okay,
would the Federation really say, no, go away? I mean, is that a new Federation trope to say go away to the leader of their enemy?
I think that in the situation that they're in, the Federation is no longer the powerhouse in the quadrant. Not like they were. Right now, it's the Emerald Chain. So you would think that if the Emerald Chain is coming to you with an armistice, that you wouldn't give their leader a whole bunch of shit over it. But that's kind of exactly what Vance was doing. Now, sure, he eventually got to a point where he started to capitulate, and he was more open to this, wanted to read that armistice and everything else, and I think he was on the right track. I just think this is something we talked about when we did our review of this episode on Beyond Trek podcast. I kind of had an issue with him taking all this, making the progress, and then saying, okay, but Osira, you have to stay on trial for all of your crimes. Okay, was that really the right time to go there? Was that really the hill you want to die on right now? And I'm not saying that she shouldn't. Yes, she should. Something should happen. There should be some accountability. But why would you bring that up right now? That's what bothered me about that. I just
it was like, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Emerald Chain is more of a powerhouse in the Federation in this current universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So if the Emerald Chain is the big bad, or let's call them the Soviet Union, right? For terms that us normies understand, right? They're the Soviet Union. They have 15 countries worth of resources, and the Federation is, say, like the first 25 states of the United States of America. Okay. So you essentially these
Eastern Seaboard or Western?
Well, everything's kind of located on the east, so let's just do the east.
Okay, let's go east. Yep.
Right. I mean, well, the first 13 original colonies were on the east, but I mean, the whole point of this, right? Like, so the originality of the United States, right? It's been broken because internal politics or whatever, and dilithium, obviously. So we lost our oil, and we can only consolidate our oil within the first 25 states. Okay, so you have the 25 states, and then you have this giant powerhouse of the Soviet Union, who's basically taken over kind of control of the world, or the galaxy, and then they have to do some sort of subterfuge with an American ship to say, well, I want to negotiate. That kind of It's like, why did you need to hijack a ship? Like, you know where they are. Like, obviously, you must have some idea if you operate in the quadrant. You must know where they are. It's like, here's my flagship, here's my armada. I want to talk, and I want to have an armistice agreement. Like, would you say no? Would you say like no? I'm sticking to my guns, except for all the other guns you have pointed at me.
Right. Yeah, you're really not in a position to get belligerent because they would have been on the losing side of that. Let's just be honest. If there's
oh my God,
if there's all out confrontation with the Emerald Chain, the Federation is going to get smoked. And
not even
so
the Voyager and the Nog can help.
When you have a superior force coming to you, saying, "Okay, let's have peace," and on top of that, here's an armistice agreement that doesn't take you to the cleaners. It's very fair. You know, we're not trying to just rail you. This isn't a one-sided divorce decree. This is here's something that can be good for everyone. And so now you've got that. You see, okay, well, they're not coming in and saying you have to dismantle all your ships. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I believe if we were in that scenario and a Russian captain had taken over a United States submarine and got to our shores and said, "Okay, I hijacked this submarine, but I want to talk." All right, let's go ahead and just leave the whole ship theft. Let's put a pin in that. We're gonna come back around to that. We'll deal with that, but let's talk about this thing that's going to keep a superior force from just annihilating us.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, we saw a little bit of that, but I kind of would have wanted to learn more about kind of the politics of the 32nd century. Post. I want to say post burn, but let's just call it post 31st century time traveling technology. Like, why are the temporal accords kept by everybody? How did the Federation?
Why did they all agree to that?
Yeah, if you go back to Enterprise, and you watch the temporal Cold War, the Nakul and their leader Vosk just didn't give a flying fuck, or as my friend Inko would say, a rolling donut, about the temporal accords. So how would the Emerald Chain, who's the big bad and the superpower, not want to use temporal technology? Like, why would they agree to it?
This is what I think. I really think that after the temporal wars, that it became very apparent that it was going to go too far, because with the time travel and hopping universes, it was like there's not going to be a good outcome to this. Somebody's going to find a way to get to our homeworld before our race ever evolved, and they're going to do something, and then now we're not going to be here. I really think that the stakes of what was happening was so high that even the Emerald Chain just said, "Okay, look, we all need to just stop using this, because we admit, we'll concede that any one of us or any number of people could find a way to do that, and it's too dangerous to have and to use." And I really don't think the Emerald Chain would even play around with that, because all it takes is warping around a sun, just find yourself in the past and wreak havoc. So that's why I think it was. I really think that it kind of came to a point where it was, all we're going to end up doing is like ending the entire quadrant or galaxy of all living life because we're all trying to go back in the past and screw around and everything. That's just my opinion. It would kind of be like the Cold War that the U.S. did with Russia, it's like the temporal Cold War, and then the temporal wars being a full-on nuclear war. Same thing happened after World War III. There was just determination made that we can't do this again.
Do you think it's the same war that they were referencing? The temporal war and the temporal Cold War? Was it the same war that everybody was referencing?
Yes, the temporal wars. The Cold War was before that, of course, and the temporal accords came as a product after the temporal wars were.
But I thought the temporal accords were in place, and then Akul and Vosk violated those accords and used temporal technology for their own advantage.
You're not wrong. You know that you're not wrong there. It's just it's another one of those plot holes, and Star Trek is just rife with them, and we kind of have to just go with it. Kind of just have to live with it. You've got to hope that the viewers and fans don't catch that, because I didn't catch that. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. However, during the time of the episode, I missed that. I missed the point that you made, and yeah, you're right. So they were able to get one past someone who's been a fan of Trek since he was 5 years old, with watching Wrath of Khan, and who's seen every episode. They got it past me, and I'm not saying I'm like the smartest one about Star Trek. I'm just saying it is possible to sneak one in past even some of the more well-versed fans.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about the payoff of the climaxes. And in the finale, we learn that the death of Su'Kal's mother is what sent him into a traumatic tailspin, and that caused the burn. Michael Burnham is promoted to captain. Saru is taking time to be with Su'Kal, and I would imagine to go back to Kaminar for a little bit. Osira is dead.
Right, to explore the culture, kind of have some time off.
Right, yeah. Some PTO maybe.
Yep.
Osira is dead. To me, she was killed like without any kind of buildup whatsoever. It's like she was just shot through the programmable matter. It's kind of like, oh, okay, you're dead. Like, what? And seemingly the Emerald Chain fell apart, and because of the dilithium that's being mined, Trill and Yvar and all these other planets are considering rejoining the Federation. And we get a cameo from our favorite Indian guy from the first episode.
Right. Yeah. That was a nice cameo to get, and I'm glad that I was wondering where Jet Reno was during all of this. We got to see her again. I really liked that they were in the new uniforms now for the time. They looked great in those. And as I alluded to earlier about the whole, it looks like the story is going towards that Su'Kal caused the burn. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I don't know really what I would have preferred. I appreciate the explanation that they gave for why it happened. I thought it was a very smart explanation. It was well crafted.
Where his cells were mutated to a point where they interact with dilithium.
Right. As far-fetched as it may seem, I was following the explanation of it, and it didn't feel like they were just making up some bullshit. and I said, okay, well, I would have not gone the route of making it that this kid had a temper tantrum and that's what caused the burn. But if I'm going to go there, then at least I can give a logical explanation as to how that happened. And I think I would have to say that did the writers adequately explain how it happened that got the buy-in for someone that was skeptical? And I would say, sure, yeah, I'll give them that. At least they explained it well. I'm, not quite the biggest fan that they went there with it. I was kind of hoping for maybe some kind of superior alien or power or something, but
that would have been my assumption. At least we could keep the death of someone's mother caused the most catastrophic thing in the galaxy. I would have preferred, if they made so many references to the temporal wars, or the temporal war, or the temporal Cold War, that it would still be some sort of race operating under the pretenses of using this child in a way to destabilize governments so that they can stay in power. Even utilizing the Emerald Chain to do their bidding. Like that would have been, to me at least, would have been at least more of a plot point to go into the next season.
Right. I agree with you on that. And all in all, I'm not saying that I disliked how this ended and where it went. I thought it was fine. The episode, the way that they handled the ending was it was a good wrap up. Give them that too. Really don't have an issue with that. I really think that going forward now, that there's going to be it's still going to be a good show, and we're in the future now, which is really kind of what the fans have been wanting for so long. They've been wanting a show that took place after Nemesis and Voyager, and to stop going back and doing prequels.
All right, let's stop here, and I want to thank BigJ for joining me. So don't forget to check out Beyond Trek Productions on YouTube, and this has been Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.